What is up, everybody, and welcome to Season 3 of the All-NBA Show, powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with 150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/AllNBA. I'm your host, Adam Mares, and I am joined for the first but not last time by my good friend, the host of the Volume, or over at the Volume, Hoops Tonight, one of the few shows I listen to other than our own. It is Jason Timpf. Jason, how you doing?
Dude, we made this happen.
We made it happen.
We talked about it all summer. I have a special thank you to Adam because my wife and I did something crazy this summer. We moved to Denver.
Let's go.
And when you leave your hometown that you were born and raised in and all your friends and family, you're going up to a place that you don't know anybody. It can be scary, but like from our first visit, you and your wife, Sheila, you guys welcomed us to town and you invited us over to dinner and you've helped us just kind of get established here. And I just hope you understand how much I appreciate that.
Of course.
But then also, we were like just sitting on your patio looking at the beautiful Rocky Mountains, just talking about basketball and like joking that we were already getting these pods out before we even got into studio. But I'm just really excited that we made this happen, man. It's going to be a ton of fun. It's just going to be such an interesting season. The Nuggets obviously are going to be at the forefront of a lot of coverage throughout the year. I'm just super, super excited, man.
And you're taking them, which I feel like I've incepted you. You know, I feel like that's what's happened is I've kind of like gotten inside your head a little bit. No, I'm excited, man. And I said this with Legs. When Legs joined the show, and by the way, he's still going to be doing the show. Don't worry. 2 times a week, me and Legler. He's obviously broadcast team #1 with ESPN now. So he has elevated, obviously, now to one of his dream gigs. And we're obviously very excited for him. We will still be bringing you shows twice a week, most likely Mondays and Wednesdays, although it will be a little bit flexible. Jason and I are going to be doing a show once a week as well. And then, of course, Mark Stein, he has a phenomenal video essay coming out tomorrow. He'll be making those for us regularly throughout the year. And he's also going to be making appearances over the weekends on this very show alongside me. But it's funny, when I first met Legs, we got paired together, we got on a call, and I was like, I don't know this guy, how's it going to go? We hopped on a call, and within 3 minutes, we were off and talking hoops. And we talked hoops for an hour. We didn't even talk shop. And I was like, hey, actually, I've called you because we have to talk shop. But apparently we don't have to because we get along. That's how it was, in my opinion. We've done some shows together. But as you mentioned, you move out here, you come on over, and we hung out for, 4 or 5 hours just talking hoops, talking everything. And so to me, I was like, it's a natural fit, man. Nose ball. We get along. That's why I think the show's going to be awesome.
Yeah, dude. And we actually hooped together for the first time the other day. That it was kind of bizarro 3-on-3 basketball. Dude, so the next morning, it was this super weird 3-on-3 setup where like layups were only worth 1 point.
Yeah,
and then
brutal.
mid-rangers were worth 2. Like the old high school 3-point line was worth 3, and then like the NBA line was worth 4. It was like this super weird kind of like format. And then the next morning, I went and played like regular pickup basketball, and I was like, okay, this is.
You weren't going back to the 4-point line and just trying to force 4-pointers.
Oh my gosh! But yeah, it was fun.
But you got to tell them how we did.
We did. We won it.
There we
won
go.
It. We had some highlights. We had some fun.
Some lowlights as well.
Dude,
but
my foot was a little sore at the end of the day. I'm just not used to playing that much in one day. But it was a good time, and it was good to meet some of the guys. Good to meet Zach Bai. It was good to get out there and compete. And hopefully, you and I will get to play a lot more over the course of time here. So
I hope so for sure. One other quick announcement here: we are also adding. You guys saw last year throughout the playoffs, AOP_NBA. Who was doing these really cool visual graphics for us throughout the year. I mean, you could see him right here. I mean, he's so talented, a real ball knower who's always in the data and making these really cool visual representations of things. You're going to want to make sure you're following us on Twitter or X, whatever you call it, as well as Instagram, because we always have this cool content, and he's going to be joining us more regularly, making that content for us. So very excited for season 3. Make sure you're subscribed. On today's show, we're going to be talking about some over-unders, not win total over-unders, some statistical over-unders throughout the season that I think are going to impact this season and some of the main players in this season. We're also going to give our League Pass teams, our top-tier NBA League Pass team, our middle-of-the-pack NBA League Pass team, and then because we're true sickos, true basketball fans, we're going to tell you which teams that suck we're still going to be locked into. I have mine. I know you have yours. But we're going to start by talking about the best Robins in the NBA, the best sidekicks. And before we get into that, we were in the era of big threes not long ago, 10 years ago or so. The way to build your roster was a big three. There still are some teams that are big three. You could argue Oklahoma City has a big three with Chet, J-Dub, and obviously Shea. a lot of teams right now, I feel like, have these star duos. Like you try to get two superstars that both can, would be number ones, but they're just alongside each other. And then there's a handful of teams, very successful ones, that have a single star, but lots of depth. And then they just use the rest of their salaries to be able to add depth behind it. What do you feel like? Is there a right way in today's NBA with this new CBA to build? And what do you think the trend is going to be going forward?
So I think it all has to do with the avoiding of redundancy. So for instance, let's take Oklahoma City. They're a 3-star build, but you have Chet as one of those stars who's like a old-fashioned defensive anchor, like a dude who can switch, a dude who can drop, a dude who's just got a ton of physical imposition on the game with his size and athleticism. And then J-Dub can really guard the ball. He's a guy who's become a really high-level defender both on and off the ball over the course of the last couple of years. And so it's not like the Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal thing where like all three dudes are just super high-level off-the-dribble shot makers and, mediocre playmakers. And Kevin Durant obviously has some defensive capability and Devin Booker does his job, but it's not exactly a group of three guys that bring a ton to the table physically, in terms of just like imposing their physical will on the game. And so I think regardless of how you construct your roster, whether it's one super duper star and a secondary ball handler like the Luka Doncic builds of the last few years, or if it's a 2-star build, or if it's a 3-star build, you got to check all the little boxes on both ends of the floor that you need. On offense, you need guys who can create advantages. You need a secondary ball handler. You need guys who can finish plays, whether it's as a vertical spacer, a guy who can spot up, or in Golden State's system, a guy who can play in 4-on-3s and make quick reads and stuff like that. On the defensive end of the floor, you need people who can guard the ball. You need people who can play at the rim. You need people who can play in help side. As long as you check all those boxes, I think you can go any direction. I think the days of redundant superstar builds, though, are over. If you tie up $100 million in your cap with three dudes who do the same things, I think you're setting yourself up for failure.
Definitely with three guys. I even wonder if the big three is almost out. I mean, Oklahoma City is a bit of an exception here because of the draft capital that they have and the young players and the way they've been able to build that system. But I think most teams are not going to be able to fit a coherent roster around 3 max contracts or even near max contracts. And I like the point about redundancy, but I almost wonder if it's more positionally redundant. Because if you look at it, and we're going to start at the top, we're going to go back and forth now and kind of just throw out who we think some of the best sidekick stars are. And my number one, which I'll start off with, is LeBron James. But he's sort of, because LeBron is obviously so great, I know he's starting the season a little banged up. He's old. He's got all those questions. But if we just go off of last year, I still think when you look at number twos, he was probably the most talented number twos, with Luka Doncic being the number one. But LeBron and Luka are very similar in what they do. So in my opinion, that is, I'm giving the number one spot to a player who fits what you're just saying, very redundant, in my opinion, next to Luka.
Yeah, I think as someone who's covered that team very closely, obviously as someone who's rooted for them over the years, it's been really interesting to see how they went from pretty well balanced to pretty redundant quickly. It used to be with LeBron, AD, and Austin, it was this kind of perfect amalgamation of talents. It was the supporting cast that was letting them down over the years because of issues with their front office. But you had like a shifty guard ball handler alongside more of like a bruising ball handler, and then your traditional defensive anchor, right? And then all of a sudden you turn that traditional defensive anchor into another big bully ball handler similar to LeBron. And then now Austin's ball handling becomes redundant. Now, what's weird with the Austin thing is now that LeBron's out for a month, it's like, thank God they have Austin to help with that over the course of the short term. But I've been thinking in the long term too, like I worry about that build over the next couple of years just being a lot of money tied up in three dudes that do a lot of the same things. I would even argue in the big picture with Luka and Austin, I'm not sure I want to have two superstars that are inferior athletes on the floor at the same time. I think that can be a little tricky compared to even like a Kyrie who, we've seen Kyrie in like NBA Finals games, like guard Steph Curry and like really do some work on that end of the floor. But as far as this in a vacuum list, it has to be LeBron. He's played in at least 70 games 2 years in a row. I was even like trying really hard. Like, is there some guy that I'm underthinking here? The only three dudes who scored more in volume last year,
just raw point per game,
were Tyrese Maxey, Kyrie Irving when he's healthy, and Karl-Anthony Towns. And LeBron's better than those guys in every other facet of the game. LeBron had like a real defensive run last year where he led that Lakers team after AD went down. He's a better defensive rebounder. He's a better playmaker, both on and off the ball. And LeBron for 2 years in a row now has been like a mid-40s catch and shoot guy who can play off the ball. So I think LeBron's pretty clearly number one on this list.
You mentioned his defense, though. Last year was the first year he had a negative defensive estimated plus minus. I know these catch-all defensive metrics can be a little wonky, but when you look at the arc of his career, it's the first time since his rookie year that has happened. And it also just tracks with a lack of energy. I mean, even the athleticism, like some of the like peak high-end stuff, he can summon it for a moment or two. But can you summon it for 48? It's clearly the answer is no now. And so I kind of wonder, I mean, you cover this Lakers team closely. I'm low on the Lakers coming in. These are famous last words, but I'm a little low on them, in part because I do wonder what the drop-off is, especially if he is coming in banged up and possibly not fully invested in the long-term outlook of the Lakers.
Yeah, so the numbers last year were really interesting because, for starters, LeBron started the year awful. For the first fourth of the year, it was some of the worst basketball he's ever played. There was also some weird lineup stuff, too, where after Anthony Davis left, their center rotation became essentially two-way guys, and LeBron was anchoring a lot of units after the starting lineup where he's playing with lesser centers, and those units just got absolutely bludgeoned on defense. But it was one of those things where in the pivotal part of the season when AD was hurt and Luka wasn't there yet, I thought he raised his game and met the level the way that they needed. But I generally agree with you that over the course of 82 games, you're not depending on him to be like a defensive anchor. As far as this Lakers team goes in general, I think there's this tendency we all have to remember the last thing we saw. Yeah. And I get it. The Minnesota series was absolutely embarrassing. There were several key things that happened in that series. We don't have to dig into it, but they were a 3 seed with a lesser roster. That's what I keep telling myself. You have a better version of Luka Doncic this season, hopefully in better shape.
For sure.
Austin Reeves looks sharp in camp. He's scoring the ball at about 25 points per 36 minutes in camp. 3-point shot isn't falling, but he's doing pretty well in some other areas. And no one's going to sit here and say that DeAndre Ayton is the hero and savior of the Lakers.
Literally no one.
No one's going to say, literally no one. No one's going to say it about Marcus Smart either. But when you essentially factored in that they added those guys for nothing, it's in juxtaposed with what they were dealing with last year at those position groups. I mean, this was a unit that had to use Jordan Goodwin last year. This was a unit that bailed on Jackson Hayes and just didn't play a center for the majority of that series. I think as long as they are healthy with an MVP level campaign out of Luka, it would be borderline impossible for them to slip into the play-in. So I'm a little bit higher on them. But then again, you know how it is in the West. It's a 20-game injury for Luka, and they could be a 7 seed.
Well, I like this. Topic number 1, show number 1 together, and you're buying, I'm selling. So now we get to follow this along here in the coming weeks to see what happens. But let's move on to another Robin. You get a pick this time. Who is the next guy you would have on your list?
So I have a cluster here of 4 dudes that are kind of on similar levels. And the 4 dudes, I'm not going to list them all here, but what I ended up going with is Jimmy Butler.
Ooh, okay.
And I know this is tricky because statistically he did not have a good season last year, and he really wasn't much to write home about for the majority of the season, even when he was playing. However, right at the end of the season, when Golden State ended up in their must-win games, really turned it up to a level that most of the guys on this list just can't hit. His last 3 regular season games, 27 points and 8 assists per game on 61% from the field, 50% from 3, 89% from the line. As we know, in that big game against the Clippers, he was right there going toe-to-toe with Harden and Kawhi. He, in the first playoff game, 25, 6, and 5. Then he bruises his tailbone. After the tailbone bruise, doesn't quite look the same, but I still think he's easily the second best playoff player on this list. That ended up being what brought me to him. Good at everything. Can kind of be a Swiss Army knife you plug into any spot on the floor. Great at drawing fouls, which is an underrated trait in terms of slowing down the pace of the game.
I mean, it's
going with Jimmy
a
here.
Super underrated trait, by the way. They took 6 more free throws per 100 possessions, and I think it's one of those things where, especially when you talk about Robins, if you think about the regular rotation, like for most teams in the NBA, that second player usually starts the second quarter while the star rests. If you're able to pull 3-4 fouls in the first 4 minutes or so of a quarter, your star comes back in and you're in the bonus. And I think that's an underrated thing that you see with a lot of these good teams is, are you able to get into the bonus early so when you go into the half, you had 4 minutes of free throw shooting basically, or put a lot of pressure on the defense not to foul. So I think it's an underrated trait. But here's the thing, man, 23-7 with him. What do you, when he got there to end the year last year, 23-7 is crazy. Did you see Kevin Pelton's ESPN article where he predicted them to come out of the West?
With the win totals to boot.
But win totals and the playoffs.
I just frankly don't see it. The issue that I have is I view this roster as extremely limited on offensive skill after you get past Steph.
Right.
Jimmy Butler had some big scoring games, and I have no doubt that he can get to that level in a playoff series in terms of just providing the little bit of pop that they need. But I look around the Western Conference, and every other team has substantially more firepower down the roster. And a lot of it for me, if I thought Steph was going to average 28 points per game this year, in addition to all the work he does offensively, like for the record, like one of the craziest stats that I saw in my summer studies was the Warriors last year with Steph Curry on the floor, according to Cleaning the Glass, had a 120 offensive rating, which is absolutely insane when you think about the type of talent he was playing with. But there's a difference between like manufacturing the offense the way that he did and then the level he can get to when he's superstar Steph. And I just worry that he can hold up at that level. I think he will start the year that way. I wouldn't be surprised if 15 games in, Steph's averaging 27. But just over the course of these last couple of years, he's been closer to that 23, 24 points per game, even in the playoffs, 23, 24 points per game. I just don't think they have the overall like oomph you need from your star talent to compete with some of these better teams in the Western Conference.
I don't even want to go in order here because I was with you. You just said you had like 4 in a cluster here. I was the same way, only I would say it was almost the entire list. You were kind of like, man, it's such a scale here that it's hard to separate them. So I kind of want to run through a bunch of them.
Let's do it.
I'm going to go with the next one for me, at least, that I think is interesting is J-Dub. And you could even put Chet on here because, like I said, they're kind of a 2A and 2B when you talk about alongside Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. But he's one of 2 players to make an All-NBA team and an All-Defensive team last year. So you're talking about a 2-way player that gets it done on both ends. 20 points per game and 1.5 steals per game, which is crazy. And then he's in the 97th percentile in deflected passes. I just listed off defensive stats, but he's also an offensive monster who is, by the way, has this very unique body. He's like plays almost bigger than what his actual height is because he has those really long arms and he's able just to kind of outstretch his body beyond guys that you typically would put on him. So he has this like size factor where he can play small, play big. And to me, I think he's one of those guys. Last year, it was all about can he get it done in the playoffs? I thought he had to grow into that. He did. And I look at this year, I know he's coming into the year hurt and banged up, but I look at it and say I would not be surprised if this was a sort of a leap year for J-Dub on that Oklahoma City team. And if they're meaningfully different, I think it's because of those 2 guys. J-Dub and Chet make a leap, but J-Dub in particular.
So I had J-Dub at 4, but once again, super, super close. So the guy that I have in between him and Jimmy is Pascal Siakam, who we can talk about in a minute. But like
might be Batman this year. You know what? I just didn't even factor him in because of that. Yeah. But you are right. If we were fully healthy, I guess.
Siakam at 3 and I have Jaylen Brown at 5, and both of them technically don't count because they're both technically going to be Batman this year, to your point. So J-Dub technically would be my 3rd Robin for this particular season. So from game 7 on, in the finals, from game 7 of the Denver series, 23 points, 6 rebounds and 4 assists, reasonably efficient, 47% from the field, 36% from the line. Big thing that stood out to me is just his ability to get to the rim. And like you mentioned, his long arms and his like, to me, there's also a power element. He's just kind of trunky.
Yeah.
And when he gets that like first step on you, he can just bump you with that shoulder and he can get all the way to the rim. And I think he also has a little bit of like a downhill semi-transition element where some of the dudes are picking him up all the way back behind the foul line when he's coming downhill in transition. And so this is actually a crazy stat. Like he was one of the higher volume at the rim scorers in the postseason last year. According to Synergy, he made more shots at the rim per game than Jokic did in that playoff run. So just to show you, now obviously one of the things that's important context with that Jokic stat is he's facing the Hartenstein Chet coverage for half of his playoff games.
And before Zubats, who I think might be his best defender.
So like no one's over here saying that J-Dub's a better rim scorer than Jokic, but it's more just a stat with a juxtaposition to describe how well he gets to the rim. The one thing that's the real pivot point for him is his 3-point shot. There was a pretty clear delineation last year in the postseason. Like when he was hitting, he was scoring at volume, and it also kind of directly translated to wins for the Thunder. But when he wasn't hitting his 3, he was more in that like 16, 17 point range. And so that's the big one to watch moving forward is if he can get more consistent with that 3-point shot.
I'm pretty high on Denver this year, and I just think they're going to be a really good team. I like their chances, but the more I think about Oklahoma City, the more I look at it and go, they just have so many ways to win. They have so many ways to be a special team this year, and J-Dub's development is a big part of that. Him being injured maybe slows that down. I thought Chet last year was going to make a leap with his off-the-dribble game, got hurt early, and I think that got shelved a little bit. Maybe something similar happens for J-Dub.
Well, and you saw Shay's preseason was just ridiculous. I was sharing the numbers with you when we were hanging out on
missed 4 shots?
Saturday.
Is that what you said? He missed 4?
4 shots. He didn't miss a single off the dribble jump shot. He was like 10 for 12 on all jump shots overall, and his assist rate was up over 10 per 36, which is an area that he hasn't really been in the past. So like, it's only preseason, so I don't want to overreact. But there's always like this: what if Shay just comes out and kicks everybody's butt this year?
If he levels up, I mean, it's not the craziest thing that he levels up. I want to throw a couple other quick ones out here. Karl-Anthony Towns is an interesting one to me because I think when you just talk about raw talent, obviously 45.5% on catch and shoot threes, which is insane. But I feel like he's almost reduced in impact in New York in a weird way. And that he is the Robin there, but I almost feel like it really is Jalen Brunson, and there's a big gap between the number two, just in how they play. And then there were fewer picks as the season went on. I got this great stat from AOP: 33 picks for Jalen Brunson per 100 possessions in the first half of the year, basically through December. In the second half, that went down to 21.6. The big question I have here is they have a new coach, presumably a very different kind of coach. At least maybe he's going to be a little more innovative on offense. Is he going to be a higher impact Robin, in your opinion, this season?
So I, at the risk of sounding like a cat hater here, which I'm not, but he actually did not make my top 10.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why is like I view Cat as such a he's such a mistake maker. Let's just put it that way.
I like that.
That it's borderline impossible to build a consistent structure around him on defense. And it's in so many different ways. In coverages, like he'll throw these like crazy hedges out 30 feet from the basket when he's jumping on one side of the screen and the ball handler hasn't even started using the screen yet. So he'll just reject, and all of a sudden Cat's just completely out of the picture. But then on another possession, randomly, he'll be super far back. He's super inconsistent with the way he executes his coverages. He's really bad with floor balance, like basic stuff. Like, dude, you're picking and popping and you're at the top of the key. You are responsible for transition defense. And then he'll just crash off the top. If you watch Game 6 against Indiana, one of the big reasons why they lost that game was big, easy run-out dunks and layups on plays where Karl-Anthony Towns is crashing off the top of the key instead of getting back in transition. And so it's one of those things where there's a huge difference for me between an athletically limited defensive player, but that has a high IQ that I can count on to at least execute a game plan. To me, a guy like this is like Jamal Murray. No one's going to call Jamal Murray an all-defense guard, but every big playoff game, I feel like Adelman and Malone were able to trust him to be where he was supposed to be, and he can make some plays. Like he had some like that big 100%. Steal on LeBron or a couple blocks.
And the fit, by the way, is also like A+. I mean, he does what you need to do along his star, which is Jokic.
As a secondary guard off of a more athletic player like KCP or Christian Brown. Exactly. So like essentially with Cat, I view him as more of the mistake-making defensive player.
You're 100% right on this.
This is something that I think is borderline impossible to build a real championship foundation around. And so for me with Cat, he just undercuts his offensive success so much that I left him off this list. With the Knicks, obviously, I would like to see them use people that are not Jalen Brunson more frequently in their offense. And Mike Brown is going to hopefully bring that to the forefront through transition pushing and hopefully playing more through Cat and more through OG and using more. I specifically want to see Brunson screen more. Like I want to see Brunson
little
screen
inverted
for Cat,
actions.
Brunson screen for OG. I think that those inverted ball screens with quick guards
He's
are
so little though. You know, like you worry about wear and tear with guys that size. And that's like screening is a tough thing to do at the NBA level because you're really making contact. I think when you're talking about inverted though, you can do it for OG. You can do it for a handful of guys. If you're trying to run it for Cat, your same point about Cat stands though with putting the ball in his hands is I don't know that he's a volume, put the ball in his hands and get efficient offense out of it because of the decision making that you're talking about.
No, and that's fair. And like I think like one of the things that I like about the inverted actions in particular is it makes very simple reads. Like if the guard sets the pick and the guy who's guarding him stays attached, just go downhill. And then once you go downhill, it's just like any other driving kick read. They meet me at the rim, I'm making a kick out. They don't meet me at the rim, I'm going all the way, right? But then also there's an easy read on the kickback, which is if he hedges, I'm just throwing it behind the back pass or I'm pitching the ball over the top, and now my guard has the opportunity to attack with an advantage. No one's arguing here that Cat having the ball is going to be the best option for them moving forward. The problem is there's this consistent trend with Jalen Brunson, which is in the regular season, the offense run heavily through him works extremely well. And then when they get to the postseason, even though he's a clutch scorer who in pure volume hits more clutch shots than everybody, the offensive rating numbers with Jalen Brunson on the floor tend to go down a substantial level in the postseason. He wears down under ball pressure. The team seems to be like, none of us have anything going. You do it. And it just turns into this like really repetitive and easy to figure out kind of concept. And so if for no other reason, they need to do that kind of stuff just to add variety. And like if you're going to, instead of running 100 OG Anunoby post-ups throughout the season, they need to run 200 OG Anunoby post-ups throughout the season. They need to find actions that they actually trust that they can go to in the postseason so they don't just default to Brunson ball every single time down the floor.
What else? We got about 3 minutes here. Who else made your list? Let's kind of run through as many as we can.
So I had Siakam 3, the addition of that
I just put them out though for this year. I was just like, if those guys are out, same with the Celtics, I'm almost counting them out.
So then I'll skip Jaylen Brown. At 6, I have Evan Mobley.
Okay.
It's worth mentioning Darius Garland here because I think he's sneaky one of the most important parts of that team because of his ability to generate dribble penetration. But Evan Mobley's going to give you 20 and 10 while being first team all defense. I have Jamal Murray at 7. I know that I'm higher on Jamal than most people, but like I just think he's one of the best playoff scorers in the league. He's a perfect fit with Jokic. We talked about him being a high IQ defender who's usually in the right spots, who can make big plays.
Fit is a big part of this because I think Jamal Murray, this is like when we're talking about Cat, he's a really good player, but the impact and the fit and all this stuff can be a little bit of a question. Jamal Murray, maybe not as high as some of the other guys you would even mention, but the fit is so perfect. Like he's designed to play alongside Nikola Jokic.
Absolutely. And like I talk about this all the time. Your value as a basketball player is unique to your situation. And Jamal Murray just literally checks every box that they desperately need as that 2-man game partner alongside Jokic. 8, James Harden. I think he's one of the best regular season floor raisers in the league to this day. His consistent bad playoff performances in big spots just drop him on this list. But
I'll tell you what, on Harden, I would have had him higher if it weren't for out of shape. He seems to be so out of shape that the team is even talking about how out of shape he is. There's like levels of out of shape, and if you are being talked about publicly as he's not in great shape, it's like that's really bad.
Textbook contract year stuff. Like he goes into everyone is like, because I'm watching that starting 5 and everyone's talking about how great shape he was in last year going into camp.
Hilarious.
Gets the money. Shows up the camp out of shape. 9, I have Alperen Sengun. I just think he's on the rise. He was my film session hero last year. He was the dude that most often I'd be watching on film. I'd be like, he is kicking that dude's ass right now.
What are the chances? I'm going to phrase it this way. What are the chances he's not the Robin this year? And that could go either one of two ways, that he ends up being more of a fulcrum, which I would be surprised. I just think KD, when he's there, he's always going to be like the guy the team yields to. But I'm so high on Amen Thompson as well. I like Sengun, but I kind of wonder how that trio shakes out just in terms of one of those guys is going to have to sacrifice more than we expect.
There's a decent chance that Alperen ends up being the best player on the Rockets this year. I would argue that KD is the greatest tip of a spear in NBA history. If you could add him to your team and you've already got a fully formed team that functions on both ends of the floor, he like basically guarantees you a title, which is what happened with Golden State, right? But I'd argue that Alperen's more of the spear. He's more of like the guy who's going to be, I think he's going to be one of their primary entry points all year just by giving him the ball and his ability to draw double teams. He's the guy that has that wonderful 2-man game chemistry with Amen Thompson. I was watching a preseason game with him early in the last couple of weeks, where he personally assisted Amen Thompson 5 times in one preseason game. Like, I think it's a chance, but my thing is like Kevin Durant's Kevin Durant, and he's always just going to get that respect as being the number one, even if he's not necessarily that guy.
And there's no way Amen Thompson just ends up being more impactful. I mean, because part of me wonders if Sengun ends up having to be the one to sacrifice more for Kevin Durant.
That's interesting.
And then Amen Thompson just kind of flourishes in this different style.
I'm a huge fan of Amen Thompson. I think we're still another year or two from him
being
early. That level of player. And then 10, I actually put Cooper Flagg. I know this is kind of crazy.
You and legs, man. What am I going to have to zig on Cooper Flagg just to keep the show balanced?
I have him ahead of guys like Julius Randle, Jaren Jackson, Karl-Anthony Towns, Franz Wagner, De'Aaron Fox, and Tyrese Maxey. Those are my honorable mentions.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I think Cooper is already right now the perfect number 2.
Wow.
So
he's like designed to be a 2.
He's obviously a little bit limited offensively in a way that prevents him from being the great number 1 that we hope he will become one day. But he's an excellent defensive rebounder. In preseason, he averaged 9 defensive rebounds per 36 minutes. That's awesome for a wing. He's an excellent connective playmaker. He makes easy, quick decisions with the basketball. He doesn't over penetrate or overcomplicate things as a playmaker. He's already an excellent defender. He averaged 4 stocks per 36 minutes in preseason. That's close to Wemby territory. Like unbelievable off-ball activity. He's just got great physical traits. He's great at anticipating what the defense is or what the offense is going to do. He plays passing lanes. He can play at the rim. I just think he's kind of like a perfect complementary talent right now. And obviously Anthony Davis isn't a good enough number 1 to make Dallas interesting, but I like Cooper Flagg a lot as a number 2 right now.
A lot of people are very high on Dallas this year, and Cooper Flagg is a big reason. Tim Legler is very high on Dallas this year, and Cooper Flagg is a big reason. So I think it's an interesting one. I want to wait and see. You might be right. A month from now, you and Legs both might be right, but I kind of want to see it before I go there. But I am excited to see him. All right, we got to take a break. There's so many. I'll tell you this: when we were going through this experiment, and I was just putting the list together, the league has a lot of good second best players.
Yeah,
and there's even bad teams where you go through and you're like, yeah, but I really like that guy. That's a really good guy to be a second best player. So it kind of shows you how deep the league is right now, just in terms of that, like number 1 and number 2 talent. We're going to take a break. On the other side, though, I've got some over-unders that I want to get to with Jason, and then we're going to finish up by talking about the League Pass teams we're most excited about on the other side. Game over the weekend. It was unbelievable. I wish I was there, but I was sitting here at DNVR because I was doing some work here on a Sunday, and one of our colleagues at the last second said, you know what, I'm going to try to hop on and find tickets. He had been looking days before and the prices were so high, but he hops on SeatGeek. And what do you know? He found a really good last second deal to be able to get into that game and then caught one of the best games of the NFL season. I want to tell you guys about SeatGeek. Give them a huge shout out. They got 35 million downloads. SeatGeek is the number 1 rated ticketing app. There's more than 70,000 events listed at SeatGeek, including concerts, sports, festivals, and more. The NFL is back, but also the NBA is back. So if you're trying to get into, like the Nuggets play on Saturday, their home opener this week, absolutely going to find some great deals on SeatGeek. And then what they have is this really cool feature where they'll show you the value, so you always know what you're getting. They have this little green dot that tells you whether it's a good value one. Sometimes, like maybe on Saturday, there might not be any green dots. It might only be, hey, you're paying full price for these tickets because it's such an in-demand game. But you'll see really easy as you scroll, the little green dots that tell you you're getting a great deal. And of course, I've got a code for you. You can use the code ALLNBA10 for 10% off of your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off of any tickets, NBA, NFL, or some concert if you use that code ALLNBA10 when you check out. Also want to tell you guys about Shady Rays. You guys have all been there. That place when you went on vacation, you brought your sunglasses, you set them down, you hopped on the plane, you got home and you thought, oh my God, I just left them there. That was an expensive, valuable pair of sunglasses. Well, they've got you covered. Shady Rays has this incredible thing where if you break or lose your sunglasses, they won't ask questions. They'll just look at your account, say, yep, sure enough, you ordered them. Here's a replacement pair. It's the most unbelievable. Honestly, I tell people this deal, it sounds like it's not even true. Order a pair with them. They have an amazing selection. I wear Navigators and Aviators exclusively. That's the only sunglasses I wear. I've got like 9 pairs of them, all Shady Rays. But if I ever lose one, which has actually happened, I just reach out to them and they send me a brand new pair within a week and they arrive. It's an unbelievable deal. And like I said, they've got hundreds of styles for you to choose from so you can make sure you have them. What I do, I'm not even kidding. I have one in my car. I have one right outside of my key drop at my house. And then I have one in my backpack so that I always have a pair of sunglasses wherever I am. We've teamed up with Shady Rays to bring you an exclusive offer. Head to shadyrays.com and use code AC35 for 35% off of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Alrighty, back here, segment 2 of the All NBA show with my new co-host, Jason Timpf. He is, of course, over at The Volume on Hoops Tonight. You could check him out. Jason, let's get into now some over-unders that I put together that I think are kind of interesting questions for this season. My beloved Orlando Magic. I've loved this team for 3 years now, James. Every season of the All-NBA show, I've been a fan of the Orlando Magic. They have a lot of my guys on there, including new addition Tristan da Silva. But I'm a little concerned that even adding Bane, even growing up and getting healthy and all these things, they're still going to be a slog on offense. And if they are, I don't know how good they'll be. So I'm going to ask you, over under 15th best offensive rating this season for the Orlando Magic. That's average, league average offense.
This was an easy under for me. So
under.
So first of all, they're 27th in offense last year.
Really bad.
So they got a long way to go
really
to get
bad.
out there. They were the worst jump shooting team in the league by a mile. Okay, like it wasn't even close. If the 29th was like, I want to say like something crazy, like 7 or 8 points per 100 jump shots better than the Orlando Magic were. Now, obviously, you bring in a couple of great shooters. Both Desmond Bane and Tyus Jones shot over 50% on unguarded catch and shoot jump shots, according to Synergy. There's obviously an off the dribble shooting element with Desmond Bane in particular that's going to draw some coverages that they've never seen in these recent iterations of the team. But it goes deeper than that. They also just don't capitalize on any of the margins, which to me kind of speaks to coaching. So, for instance, like you're this freaky athletic team who is number 2 in defense, number 2 in forcing turnovers, yet you're not even top 10 in transition frequency. They were 27th in transition points per game, obviously fueled by their inability to hit shots, but they weren't even top 10 in frequency, which I think is like indefensible for a team that's forcing a lot of missed threes and a lot of turnovers. They are 19th in passes made per game. There are all these like little margin things that speak to me about missed opportunity on the offensive end of the floor. And like, it's been a frustration that I've had with Jamal Mosley for a little while. I just don't think there's a lot of inventiveness or really intentionality to the way they play offense. So for instance, like generally speaking, a smart basketball team goes down the floor and they know 2 things. They know their best strengths with their offensive lineups, and they know the biggest weakness with the defense that they're looking to attack. And generally speaking, you're going to try to connect those 2 pieces every single time down the floor. And it feels like a lot of just Franz and Paolo standing around waiting for a ball screen from either Wendell Carter Jr. or for one of their guards. And there's very little in the way of like off-ball movement or overall just like pace that they're playing with and ball and player movement. And it just makes them super easy to guard. And the most frustrating thing for me is I was specifically interested in seeing a lot of Desmond Bane and Paolo Banchero together in like 2-man game concepts, whether it's Bane coming off of Paolo or vice versa. And we saw very little of that in preseason. It seems more like they're thinking of themselves as LeBron and D Wade, like, hey, your turn, my turn, your turn, my turn. You can literally see it in their body language. They like point at each other and like signal to each other, like, you go, do it. And it's like, dude, let's do this together. And one of the things that I keep thinking about is like, Giannis Antetokounmpo was one of the best pick and roll efficiency players in the league last year because he ran so many inverted guard screens with like AJ Green and with Gary Trent Jr. just screening, slipping out. Giannis was constantly getting downhill and spraying out to shooters, finishing at the rim or kicking back to those dudes for good looks. And to me, like Paolo is this big ball handler with some real ball skills. Like use Bane as a screener and vice versa. Use him as a on-ball, use Bane as an on-ball player so you can get Paolo on the roll so he can play with a 4-on-3 and use some of his advantages athletically going downhill. I just feel like we're going to see way too many possessions this year where they don't run when they need to, where they end up in the half court, and it's just Paolo and Franz settling for these tough 10 to 15 foot floaters and jump shots that are, both of them have gotten okay at them, but that's not enough to really justify the volume that they take.
I think, this is a really good take. And one of the things that makes me think about is young coaches, but sometimes just a type of coach, they want to play safe. And it's like, we're a great defensive team. Fast breaks are dangerous. They're risky. If you blow it, then you're getting a fast break the other way. Sometimes that deliberate offense is it's safe. We're not going to turn the ball over because we're going to be very slow and deliberate and we're going to attack in our points. And so I think there might be a little bit of that with them. You hope they grow out of it and you hope that Bane adds, one, he's not just a great shooter. He also can handle the ball and do some things. So you hope that it gets a little bit more life into their offense. But I also just wonder, as we've always wondered, and everybody wonders, if Paolo and Franz are the right pair, and if maybe that's a little bit of it, is 2 of the guys you give the ball to most, slow it down a little bit because they have to, because big men tend to slow it down a little bit.
They're a little redundant too.
And very redundant, which is something we just did with our Robins, because I love Franz. Everybody knows that. Celtics, first in 3-point field goal attempts per game. The reason this one's interesting is you lose some of the guys that were your volume 3-point shooters, also obviously Jason Tatum, but even Porzingis. But it is sort of their MO that they're just going to get them up and get them up more than anybody else. So is somebody going to pass him this year now that they changed their personnel?
I like this as an over-under because it's technically not an over. It's just to stay the same or under. Yeah, so first of all, they were still number 1 in preseason.
Yeah, I saw that.
3-point volume.
Yep.
They only shot 31% on them, which I think is a testament to the difference in rim pressure. Just one, yes. Jason Tatum, but 2, also their bigs were so good at like slipping out of action into the middle of the floor and kind of manufacturing that dribble penetration through those slips. And if you don't get paint touches that don't compromise the defense, you're not going to get the same quality threes. I've also been like super disappointed in Anthony Simons as like a dribble penetrator. He's just been taking a lot of off the dribble jump shots in preseason. So I'm hoping that that's a preseason thing and that they get more out of Anthony in time. But I mean, this was an easy one for me. They took 6 more than everyone else in the league last year.
This one's easy for you because it was not easy for me. Yes, they took 6 more.
So do I think they're going to generate as many as they did last year? No. Do I think they're going to be as efficient on them as they were last year? No. But I think culturally, there's just such a large gap in their approach to the next highest volume team that I think Boston probably hangs on to that just by a slimmer margin.
Do you know, and I should have written this down, who are some of the teams chasing them? Is Cleveland right behind them?
Yeah, Cleveland was one of them. I can't remember. I looked at it this morning. I just don't have the list in my head.
I forgot. I think I'm going to take the under on this one. And for all the reasons you said, that I think it's going to be a little bit harder for them to generate good looks. And I wonder if teams kind of adjust to them. They're a limited team and they kind of have a system that they run. And that system works in large part because of the pressure points are everywhere on the floor. And I think as the season goes on, there's a lot of pressure. They're lacking a lot of pressure points. And I just wonder if they become a little bit easier to guard, force them into some of the things they don't like. And that alone just reduces them enough. And then you wonder about the rate of the 3-point rate keeps going up. And you wonder if some of these other teams will just catch up to what they're doing. It is a copycat league. They did win a championship 2 years ago, and that stuff will filter through the system. Here's a fun one. For me personally, Denver's net rating swing last year with Jokic was 21.4, excluding garbage time. That's an insane number. When he went to the bench, they got absolutely murdered. When he was on, they dominated. I tried to make this line. This was such a hard one. They've gotten more depth, veteran players. I set the line at a swing of plus 14. Plus 14 is still a huge swing. It's still a pretty big swing. You think his on is going to be pretty good, so you're really just asking. His on is usually around 12, plus 12. So you're really kind of asking if you think the bench is going to be more than a -2 when he's off the floor.
Yeah, so this one was a tough one for me too for that very reason. I'm going to go very slightly under here. I think it's going to be in that like plus 13, plus 12 range. Here's my kind of like feeling on this. They were plus 11.5 per cleaning the glass last year with Jokic on the floor. You have to think that goes up to around plus 13 or so. But I'm going to go with the Denver bench surprising everyone and ending up about plus 1 per 100 possessions. So that would leave the gap at about 12. It's just, I think that, it's so funny because I've not liked Valanciunas just about just about anywhere else. But I think he's such a perfect fit on this team because he just provides this like rough facsimile of what Nikola Jokic does. And again, no one's saying he's Nikola Jokic, but when you're playing against bench talent in the NBA, like I was watching a preseason game. I was the one against Minnesota, and I feel bad because I'm blanking on the big man.
Yeah, it was because it's the young big man that they have.
It's killing me that I can't remember the kid's name.
I'll pull it up.
But anyway, Jonas checks into the game.
Was it Zakarski? Was it?
I think it was like Ballinger
or Behringer.
Yeah,
Joan Behringer.
So Joan Behringer's on the floor, and they just go like, let's give the ball to Jonas. And Jonas just bullies him right to the front of the rim 3 consecutive times. And it's like, there's a lot of lineups in the league where their bench big man is more of like a switchy, undersized, athletic type of big. And then you also get a level of like screen setting from Jonas that you just weren't getting from other bigs in the past. And so in general, first of all, you just have more good players. So let's start in a very simple way. You just have a lot more good players so you can keep more talent in your bench groups. And then 2, you have the ability to have some schemes consistency with your starting lineup. I think it's completely reasonable for a dead serious championship contending team to just be sharp enough to be slightly positive with Jokic off the floor. So I think they're going to be right around plus 12 on off with Jokic this year.
I'm actually going to go the other way and take the over, but my reasoning for it, I do think the bench is going to be good. I think it still will be probably a slight negative. There is something to Jokic's style is so unique that it's hard for a team to play when he's off the court because it's almost like you have to switch your identity, even with Val being a facsimile. But I'm taking it for a different reason. So I think Denver starters are going to be really good. And I think that the bench players, as much as they are good without Jokic, you bring them in to have that depth. It's actually just more guys for Jokic to play with in staggered lineups as well. And I think his on is going to be higher than ever, like a plus 15, plus 16. So even if the bench is just a neutral, that still is going to put you at the over. So I'm going to take the over on this one. I don't think it'll be a storyline though, like last year. Last year it was more about the negative was so high, so that's what made it. I think this year it's just going to be they're really great when he's on the floor, and they're good when he's not.
Really quickly, I think one of the things that'll be an interesting kind of subplot here is Adelman's lineup structure. Because if we end up seeing a whole lot of like Tim Hardaway Jr., Bruce Brown, Julian Strawther, Peyton Watson, Nikola Jokic lineups, where like Adelman basically goes, I'm going to let Jamal, Christian, and Aaron all play with the bench groups to anchor them so that we just have more talent on the floor with Cam Johnson too. I think that could be one of those things that kind of pulls it a little bit closer than it would typically be. I'm curious to see how much he anchors bench groups with starting talent.
I doubt he does that, but it would be interesting, something interesting to try. They just have traditionally not done that, and even in the preseason, they haven't been looking to do that, so I would be a little bit surprised. Let's go with Houston, 10th in half-court offense this year. Last year, they were 13th. You add Kevin Durant, it's like, oh, that's going to make the biggest difference. I do think it's going to make a difference, but I put the line at 10th.
This was tough for me, but I'm going under. So Cleaning the Glass and Synergy both had them at 22nd in half-court efficiency last year at about 93.2 points per possession. That was 8 points per 100 possessions below a top 10 pace. I don't think there's much of a chance that they get up that high. I think a good goal for them is about 15th.
In half-court offense?
In half-court offense.
Yeah.
Now, again, like they were a good enough transition offense that it bolstered their numbers. But the big reason for me is kind of taking it back to the Kevin Durant tip of a spear thing. He's not the offensive engine type.
Right.
He's not the like, I'm going to come in here and just generate this flow where all of a sudden a bunch of lesser offensive players start producing at a super high clip. There was one brief stretch in Brooklyn where he became this like pick and roll spamming, everyone's blitzing him and he's generating all these 4-on-3s. He had a brief stretch in Brooklyn where he was playing that style of basketball, but it has not been something he's consistently done. He's been more of like a off ball, coming off of action, looking to score versus on ball reps being more like high post, low post ISO type stuff, where it just doesn't necessarily generate a ton of flow within the team. So like, I think Kevin Durant helps the team. They're certainly going to be better offensively. They're definitely going to be way better at the end of games. But like, I just don't see them cracking the top 10 in half court efficiency. I think you have to have a certain amount of like aggregate refined offensive skill to do that. And I just don't think this roster is going to put lineups like that together.
I want to run through these last two just because I want to get to our League Pass teams. But New York, I'm just fascinated by the Knicks because the new coach, it's always a little bit interesting. 20th in pace. Last year they were 26th, but this has been some of the talk in the preseason of, oh, we're going to play faster, we're going to play faster. I mean, a lot of teams say that this time of year, but 20th in pace for the New York Knicks.
They pushed the ball more in transition in preseason. They had some stretches, some halves where they were amazing in transition, but they still ended up being towards the bottom of the league in pace because when they do get into the half court, they just slow down so much. So I'm going to kind of zag here on you and just say, I think they'll be better in transition scoring. I think they'll be better in points off of turnovers, but I still think their pace metric will be relatively low.
Not a bad one. I honestly don't even have a take on this one, to be honest with you. Like I'm really not sure which way it's going to go, but I do think it'll be a fascinating one. My gut tells me that New York is not built to be able to run like that. So I think they're kind of built to play a slow style. The last one I have for you is Oklahoma City, average margin of victory, plus or minus 12. It was 12.87 last year. One of the big questions I have coming in, and I kind of tipped my what I'm thinking here at the top of the show, Oklahoma City's really good, and there's no reason to think they're going to be worse other than boredom or fatigue or something like that. But 12.87 is such an absurd number that I couldn't put the number higher, so I just went with average margin victory of 12.
So I'm going to go slightly under again here. I have kind of like a theory about this just in terms of human nature. So they just have a completely different target on their back now. So like, for instance, I feel like the Thunder last year were like the young pain in the ass team where you're like, oh, the Thunder are here and they're going to pick us up and they're going to be in our jersey and they're going to be trapping. And it's like, but like, I think this year they're more like the measuring stick. Like they're the champs. They had the trophy. We have to demonstrate that we can compete with these guys. So I think that'll just lead to a different like possession to possession level of engagement for their opponents, which I could think easily would manifest in roughly a 15% difference in their statistical output. So like I could see them being more like a plus 11, plus 10.5 type of net rating team.
I might go over on this one, and again, I think like from a
coming around on OKC,
because from a psychological standpoint, I'm with you. Like all of these things make sense. It's just they do it so easily. You know, like the Thunder seem to be able to like, of all the different ways you could win, you could take 3 of them off the board and they still win by 14 points because they just have so many different players and different things that they can do. So part of me wonders if the Oklahoma City is just going to have another one of these dominant regular seasons where they win 68, 69, 70 games again. And the only thing holding them back is their own, you know, how hard do they want to push? I mean, that's the only thing I could see the number dropping is if they get to the end of the year and say, hey, we're being extra cautious and we're going to take our foot off the gas a little bit more than they did last year, which they didn't really take their foot off the gas last year, which was one of the interesting things. They ran through the tape.
They're just so young.
Yeah.
They're just so young and they kind of enjoy kicking everyone's ass. Yeah. So it's like, it is what it is.
All right, let's get into our League Pass teams here to round out the show. And we're doing it a little bit differently. We're going to go with one top end team, one middle of the road team, and one bad team. Now, League Pass is funny because your top end teams are on national television. Most of them are on national television a lot, but nonetheless, and also, by the way, is League Pass, like this League Pass rankings, a lot of people will do this every year. There's 5 different things. There's ABC, there's Peacock, there's, you know, NBC, there's Amazon, there's ESPN. There's so many different ways to watch now that I'm not even sure if League Pass is it anymore.
There's also so many good teams, though, that like that's the thing that like because there's like 19 highly entertaining teams to watch, like especially in the West, it's like there's going to be a lot of like Denver, Minnesota on League Pass, or like Houston versus Oklahoma City on League Pass. Like you're going to have good League Pass games out West.
I'll tell you what I'm so interested in, man, because they showed this on Sunday Night Football last night, a preview of Mike Tirico and Michael Jordan like having a sit down one-on-one. Airing tomorrow, by the way, as the season opens. I cannot wait to find out what kind of analyst Michael Jordan is. He might be terrible. There's a real chance that he might be obnoxiously bad, but there's also just something too. He's, in my opinion, the greatest player of all time, and he's one of the most interesting basketball players of all time. And I just can't wait to hear what he thinks about the game now, because I feel like I don't actually know what Michael Jordan thinks of the modern game or modern players.
So I think there's 2 positive outcomes here. One, that it's crotchety old Michael Jordan who just talks shit the entire time.
Minus 150 right now on FanDuel.
The other one, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky, is like how much effort does he put in? like it'd be really cool to see him put in a lot of effort and give his like true authentic opinions on the way these teams are playing. What I'm hoping is that it doesn't, the bad outcome is the like Shaq on Inside the NBA outcome. Because like Shaq obviously is funny, so he brings like a humor element to the equation. But like if Michael Jordan gives that level of effort to where he kind of just feels like he's just saying things without really watching the games, I think that would be kind of a bummer. But if he's animated and talks trash, that's good. And then if he gives effort and covers the games in a real way, I think that's good. So those are the 2 outcomes we should be rooting for.
All right, let's go to our top end teams. I'll let you go first here.
So I know this is the boring answer, but I put Denver.
Hey, me too. We did it.
I just think they play the prettiest basketball in that group. And now they have the most talented roster they've had in the Jokic era. I also am like always really fascinated by like when there's a real veteran team that has like a real shot to win the title, it's always fun to just watch them traverse the regular season. So I'm interested in watching them. But because that's boring, if I had to pick another team, I'd say Houston for the exact opposite reason. I think it's going to be ugly in the best way. And I think that they're going to be entertaining because of it.
Houston might have a little edge to him as well this year. I mean, KD, as he gets older, seems to be more interested in kind of, you know, carrying that chip on his shoulder, which is obviously fun to watch on the court. I went with Denver as well, though, and I know it's my team. I didn't care. There was no other team I could put on that I could say that meaningfully was going to be more exciting. But it's not because of Jokic. We've had Jokic for the last 5 years at this level, just doing what he's doing. I'm excited for Jamal Murray this season. He is one of the most fun players, in my opinion, when he is on, when he is at his top level. He has an elite footwork, elite shot making. He has a toughness and an edge to him. And I just see him carrying himself a little bit differently than I have over the last few years. So I think this might be a very fun Jamal Murray season, and by extension, a fun Nugget season.
Because he knows he can win. Like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, even Jamal's like, I got to get it together this year.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think they could have won these last handful of years. You know, you go to game sevens and you take teams the distance. But I do think there's something maturing that has happened in him, and maybe a little bit of being called out. There's a new coach, you know, like you don't have that same rapport, but he looks great. He looks ready, and I'm excited for it.
You and I did a Nuggets season preview on my show last year.
And it was early.
Yeah. And I remember the attitude was a little different than it is this year. We can admit that.
I tell people,
we're like, oh, well, we have Russell Westbrook, you know, because we have to.
I tell people this all the time, man. Last year I was not high on this. Is not like every year I come in optimistic or this or that. It's just I truly think they're good this year. Last year I thought they were going to be terrible. If we go to our middle teams here, I'll go first. I think everybody kind of knows, like, if you watch this show, every episode, you know the teams that I kind of fall in love with, and I'm falling in love with the Atlanta Hawks. I'm one of these guys that doesn't hate watching Trae Young. I do see all the flaws and how hard it is to build and win around him and all those things, but he's just so fun to watch that I'm into it. And Jalen Johnson, such a fascinating player to me. They have two of my guys, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Dyson Daniels, who I just think are really interesting. They have a team that I think is going to be very fun to watch. And might be a very entertaining offense, even with Jalen Johnson, Trae Young, Porzingis. I'm into it.
Yeah, I need Atlanta to be good to validate most of my opinions on the way modern basketball games are won.
Okay.
Just because of the way they've built their team. It's like I'm a big believer in advantage creation. Trae Young, to me, is one of the better advantage creators in the league. He's just really good at setting up players with the dude sprinting at them instead of standing still, right? And then you've got all these athletes that do all these things around them. Like you mentioned Jalen Johnson. To me, Zachary Rissache is one of the best runners of the court I've ever seen. Like when I watch him on tape, I'm like, he is just sprinting past everybody in transition over and over again. I like Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Dyson Daniels as perimeter defense options. They're always going to have an elite, like top tier guard defender on the opposing guard every game.
Second.
Like so I need them to be good. I put San Antonio here.
It's a good one.
Just simply because of Victor Wembanyama. It's weird because I'm not super high on the Spurs as a team. I don't think they have as many good players as people think. Like it's crazy because it gets associated with Wemby to where sometimes Spurs fans are like, well, you don't I believe in Wemby. Trust me. I think he's going to be unbelievable, but I just don't think they have enough really, really good basketball players to be competitive in a stacked West right now. But how could you not watch that dude every single night? He seems like the kind, like I was actually talking about it with my neighbors. We were watching some football last night. And like, I think one of the games I want to get to Ball Arena for this year is when the Spurs come to town. Like, I just want to see him.
Yeah. Quickly becoming an expensive ticket, to be honest with you, because of what a draw he is. Yeah. Spurs are a little bit lower on my league pass rankings, but I think they'll probably climb as the year goes on. Mm-hmm. I enter the season a little bit less excited for them. Not because of Wemby, mostly because of some of the other pieces that I don't find as compelling. Let's go to the best part now to round out the show. Bad teams. Give me a bad team that you're like, you know what? I'm kind of into it.
So I'm kind of cheating here because I think this team has a chance to join the middle here and get up into like 35, 36 wins, but I'm going Portland.
Man, I knew you were going to go there. That's a middle team to me. That's for sure a middle team.
By the way, I put a bad team too, but like essentially with Portland, like Denny Avdia to me kind of reminds me of like a poor man's Luka. He just is a big ball handler, is like kind of sneaky good at the middle, kind of short range scoring game and underrated passer. Obviously, Shaedon Sharpe has been showing a lot of scoring pop. Their center rotation, Toumani Camara is obviously one of the more interesting young 3-and-D prospects. So I really like Portland. But if I had to choose a bad team, I went with Washington. And it just comes down to they sneaky have like a strong defensive foundation with Alex Sarr and Bilal Coulibaly. So like they compete and they're physical in a way that you wouldn't expect for a young, bad team. And then Trae Johnson had a rough preseason. He was kind of forcing the issue and just looking for his shot, not making good reads and taking really tough shots. But he, to me, is the archetype of like off-ball scoring guard that succeeds in the NBA. And one of the things that I like about them is they've got some good vets with Chris Middleton and CJ McCollum to kind of help guide these guys in their development. So of all of the poo-poo platter of NBA teams, I think Washington will be one of the more fun ones to watch.
I'm late to Washington because a lot of people I've heard them pop up a lot as like the good bad team to watch this year, and I'm excited to get into them this year, but they're not a team that's on my radar. With Portland, what I think is interesting about them is, in addition to all the things you said, the interesting players, they're a team that is figuring out who they are, and I think that's one of the most fun stages to kind of watch a team is when they go from chaos of we're just a collection of guys and we don't know who we are to like, okay, we're starting to be this. We're built around this type of play and this type of player. And we saw it obviously last year come together for him. And I think we'll see it even more this year. You mentioned Avdi and Sharp. I think they're both very fun to watch. So I think that's a good pick. I went with a way out of left field pick because I think this team's going to be really bad. And that's the Brooklyn Nets.
Okay.
And I have to be honest, man, it has a lot to do with Michael Porter Jr.
He's getting buckets.
He's getting buckets, man. Michael Porter Jr. has one of the prettiest jumpers I've ever seen in my life. It's right up there with the Klay Thompsons, guys that just have Ray Allen's, the textbook three-point shots that you look at and say, man, that looks like it's going in every single time he shoots it. And Michael Porter is a bit of this tragic figure, in my opinion, in that he was a number one guy who was cursed with these back injuries that made him into a role player. Brooklyn doesn't care what they're doing this year. In fact, they hope he shoots too many times because they want to lose. This is a weird little chance to look at a guy. We have these what ifs all the time, right? Great players. What if they would have not gotten injured and come in? This is almost like we get to find out. Yeah. We'll never know because he's not fully healthy. But I think that we'll get a little bit of a window because the question with him was always decision making and all these different things. He is going to have I think he's going to have 40-point nights. I wouldn't be surprised if he had a 50-point night. He's going to have some 13-point nights, and he's going to have some 2 of 15 shooting nights. So it's going to be a very up and down. But I'm so curious to see what it looks like. You also have obviously Cam Thomas and some other knuckleheads, I think, over there. But I think it's going to be a fun team to watch, and I'm just excited to watch Michael Porter get to fire away.
They're like the Wizards of a couple years ago with Kuzma and Jordan Poole.
Just go, man.
You two, you got this.
Maybe, yeah, I was going to say maybe less of a disaster, but actually, as soon as I almost said it, I said, nah, it'll probably be the same disaster. Let us know, guys, who is your lower end League Pass team? I'm so curious. You can also play along with any of the games that we were playing on this show, the over-unders, as well as who you think the best Robins are. We always like hearing what people think. And more importantly, I want to hear, I am just so excited to have Jason Timpf aboard. Like I said, we love talking hoops together. As of recently, we like playing hoops together, which is always great. And we want to bring you some great content. He, of course, hosts Hoops Tonight over on The Volume, which I recommend you checking out. It's a very good show. But stay locked to this channel. Got Jason Timpf 2 times a week with Tim Legler, Mark Stein, and a great video essay coming your way that you're not going to want to miss. So if you enjoyed the show, make sure you're subscribed. We got great content all year long. We got 3 super chats. A wild Timpf appears. He's super effective with a handful of emojis. There you go. Comes to us from DVD. W. Jones says, welcome to Colorado, Jason. Enjoy those Nuggets games. You're
Thanks
making it
for
out.
welcoming me, guys. Yeah, I've been here for 3 months officially, and I'm loving it so far.
You're not going to the Laker game, though. I'm telling you right now. I'm going to schedule some kind of work thing you can't go to because I'm not letting Lakers fans in that building. DVD hops back, and he says, no Kings on Saturday, so we got 2 NBA Royals today. I like it, man. Thank you for the shout-out. Everybody, we hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you're following us on Twitter. AOP is making some great content based on all the stuff you see on the show, as well as stuff he finds in the data. It's really fascinating stuff to follow, and you're going to want to follow along. Hit that like button for us on the way out. We'll see you Wednesday with Tim Legler.
Really? We all silly like the mayor.